Hermes, the messenger of the gods in Greek mythology, is one of the most fascinating and multidimensional figures in the entire pantheon of Olympus, a being who was not only swift and clever but also deeply symbolic of communication, transition, trickery, commerce, and the eternal movement between worlds. When people today think of Hermes, many imagine the winged sandals, the quick strides, and the god who could deliver messages across the heavens, the earth, and even into the depths of the underworld. Yet the story of Hermes is far more expansive than just his speed, because he embodies the human longing for connection, the cleverness to navigate obstacles, and the mysterious balance between lightness and depth. To truly understand Hermes, one must step into the ancient world of Greece, where myths were not just tales for entertainment but deep cultural narratives that carried lessons, inspirations, and reflections on human life. Hermes was born of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Maia, a nymph of great beauty who lived in a cave on Mount Cyllene in Arcadia. The very birth of Hermes already carried an aura of mystery, for unlike many other gods whose births were accompanied by cosmic battles or dramatic prophecies, Hermes slipped into existence quietly, yet almost immediately began to display the cunning and swiftness that would define his character. According to ancient stories, Hermes was barely a day old when he performed his first act of trickery. As the myth goes, he slipped out of his cradle, found the herd of Apollo, his half-brother and the radiant god of music and prophecy, and stole away 50 of Apollo's cattle. But Hermes was no ordinary thief. He moved the cattle backwards so that their tracks would be reversed, confusing anyone who might follow them. He even created the first pair of sandals to disguise his footprints further. After securing the cattle, he returned to his cradle and wrapped himself back in swaddling clothes, feigning innocence as though he had never left. This clever act revealed that Hermes was not a god of brute strength or sheer power like Ares or Poseidon but of wit, speed, and resourcefulness, qualities that humanity often admires because they represent survival through intelligence rather than force. When Apollo discovered the theft, he was enraged and confronted the infant Hermes, who denied the accusation with such charm and wit that even the great god of the sun could not help but marvel. Eventually, the conflict was brought before Zeus, who laughed at the mischief of his son but also ordered Hermes to return the cattle. To smooth over the situation, Hermes invented the lyre from a tortoise shell and presented it to Apollo, thus creating one of the most iconic instruments in Greek culture. Apollo, delighted with the gift, forgave Hermes and even gave him the caduceus, the staff entwined with two serpents that would become Hermes' most recognizable symbol of authority. This story reveals a great deal about Hermes' place in the mythological imagination. He was the trickster, but also the reconciler, the one who could steal yet charm, deceive yet inspire, confuse yet create harmony. The Greeks saw in him not just a playful god but a necessary force of balance in a world where conflict and misunderstanding were inevitable. Hermes was later entrusted by Zeus with the role of divine messenger, an appointment that suited him perfectly, for his speed and agility allowed him to move effortlessly between Olympus, the mortal world, and the underworld. With his winged sandals, known as the talaria, he could glide over land and sea, and with his winged helmet he became almost untouchable, a figure who was everywhere at once. The image of Hermes racing across the sky, carrying messages for Zeus or delivering souls to Hades, is more than just a mythological scene. It symbolizes the human need for connection between realms, the need to bridge gaps between gods and mortals, between life and death, between conflict and resolution. His speed was not only physical but also intellectual, for Hermes was the god of language, communication, and even interpretation. In fact, the very word hermeneutics, which refers to the study of interpretation, is derived from his name, showing how deeply embedded his essence is in the way humans understand meaning itself. Hermes' role as a psychopomp, a guide of souls to the underworld, adds another dimension to his character. Unlike Hades, who ruled the underworld with stern authority, Hermes was the gentle escort, the companion for the journey of the soul as it departed from life. This made him a comforting figure in Greek spirituality, for he represented the idea that no soul would walk alone into darkness. There was always a guide, a swift and compassionate presence who could lead the way. The combination of light-hearted trickster and solemn guide reflects the duality of Hermes, a god who could laugh and jest yet also take on the weight of escorting souls to eternity. This duality makes him deeply human in a way that many gods were not, for he embodied both joy and gravity, both mischief and responsibility. Beyond his divine duties, Hermes was also revered as the patron of travelers, merchants, and even thieves. This might seem like a contradiction, yet it makes perfect sense when one considers that commerce and theft both involve movement, negotiation, and sometimes deception. Merchants in ancient Greece prayed to Hermes for safe journeys and profitable exchanges, while travelers invoked his protection on the roads. His presence was marked by Hermes, stone pillars with his head carved atop them, which were placed along paths and crossroads to honor him and to serve as markers for those in need of guidance. This shows how Hermes was not a distant god of abstract ideas but a practical presence in the everyday lives of the Greeks. He was the protector of movement, of the uncertain paths of life, and of those who dared to venture into the unknown. His association with communication also extended to the realm of invention and storytelling. Hermes was credited with the creation of several forms of writing and the arts of eloquence and persuasion. This made him not only the swift-footed messenger but also the god of orators, poets, and anyone who relied on words to shape reality. In this way, Hermes becomes symbolic of the human power of speech, the ability to move others not through force but through the quickness of mind and the magic of words. Even today, when people speak of eloquence, negotiation, or clever diplomacy, they are invoking the spirit of Hermes whether they realize it or not. What makes Hermes especially relevant to a modern audience is his role as a bridge. In an age where communication is instantaneous and global, Hermes embodies the ancient archetype of the messenger who connects people, cultures, and worlds. His speed is mirrored in the speed of our technology, his wit in the cleverness of our innovations, and his ability to cross boundaries in the way we constantly navigate between different identities, roles, and realities. The fascination with Hermes is not just about ancient mythology but about the timeless human desire to be quick, clever, and connected. His myths continue to inspire because they remind us that intelligence and adaptability can be just as powerful as strength and might. And that sometimes the greatest victories come not from confrontation but from clever negotiation and reconciliation. In artistic depictions, Hermes is almost always shown as youthful, graceful, and in motion. His winged sandals and cap highlight his swiftness, while the caduceus in his hand emphasizes his role as mediator and bringer of balance. The caduceus, though often confused today with the rod of Asclepius, the true symbol of medicine, remains an enduring emblem of Hermes' influence. It represents not only negotiation and commerce but also the intertwining forces of duality, life and death, truth and deception, heaven and earth. Hermes' very essence is one of movement between these dualities. Never fixed in one place, always transitioning, always guiding. This makes him a powerful symbol for anyone who feels caught between worlds, whether literal or metaphorical, and a reminder that movement itself is a form of power. Hermes also played key roles in many other myths, often serving as the deus ex machina who could resolve conflicts through clever intervention. He helped Perseus in his quest to behead Medusa by giving him the winged sandals and guidance on how to avoid her deadly gaze. He assisted Odysseus in Homer's epic by giving him the herb moly to protect against the enchantments of the witch Circe. In both cases, Hermes is the god who provides the tools, the knowledge, or the swiftness to overcome challenges, embodying the idea that cleverness and preparation are essential allies in any heroic journey. This makes Hermes not only a god of trickery but also a god of empowerment, giving mortals the chance to succeed against overwhelming odds. The perception of Hermes as a trickster should not be mistaken for malevolence. Unlike Loki in Norse mythology, whose mischief often carried destructive consequences, Hermes' tricks were more about cleverness, playfulness, and teaching lessons. His theft of Apollo's cattle, for instance, resulted not in chaos but in the creation of music and the reconciliation between two gods. His pranks were light-hearted and often had positive outcomes, reinforcing the idea that humor and wit could resolve conflicts where anger and violence might fail. This makes Hermes a deeply endearing figure, a god who reminded the Greeks that not all problems require war or punishment, sometimes they require laughter, charm, and a quick mind. For centuries, Hermes has been a source of inspiration not only in mythology but also in philosophy and culture. In ancient Greece, he was connected to the concept of hermeneutics, the art of interpretation, reflecting the way humans make sense of messages and meanings. In later traditions, he was linked with Hermes Trismegistus, a fusion of Greek and Egyptian wisdom, whose writings influenced alchemy, philosophy, and the Renaissance pursuit of knowledge. This evolution of Hermes from mythological trickster to philosophical sage shows how his essence could be adapted to different ages and contexts, always embodying the human desire for understanding, speed, and connection, even today. Hermes' legacy continues in countless ways. His name appears in literature, art, psychology, and even fashion, symbolizing speed, grace, and cleverness. In psychology, Carl Jung considered Hermes an archetype of the trickster and the guide, an inner force that pushes humans toward transformation through unexpected paths. In culture, Hermes represents both the literal speed of communication and the metaphorical quickness of the mind, reminding us that agility is not just about the body but about thought and spirit. His myths remind us that life is full of crossroads, and at each one, there is the possibility of clever choices, guided steps, and swift movements that can change destiny. Hermes' influence in later ages reveals something remarkable about mythology. It does not remain frozen in time, but adapts, evolves, and continues to resonate with each new generation. In the case of Hermes, the qualities that the ancient Greeks associated with him, speed, cleverness, communication, mediation, and trickery, are universal traits that never lose their relevance. Think of the modern world, where information moves faster than ever, where diplomacy and negotiation are as vital as strength, and where people admire those who can use wit to overcome obstacles. In many ways, Hermes seems almost like a god designed for modernity, a timeless archetype whose wings are as much digital as they are mythological. When the ancient Greeks honored Hermes at crossroads with stone pillars called Hermes, they were acknowledging his role as a protector of travelers and transitions. Today, every time we stand at a literal crossroads in life, choosing between careers, relationships, or decisions, we echo that same spirit, seeking guidance and clarity. Hermes was not about staying still, he was about moving, deciding, venturing into the uncertain. That is why he continues to feel alive as a mythological figure. He embodies movement itself, the unstoppable force of time and decision. The caduceus, Hermes' staff entwined with serpents, remains one of the most enigmatic symbols in mythology. While often confused with the rod of Asclepius, which represents medicine, the caduceus carries a broader and more mystical meaning. The two serpents intertwining around the staff represent duality, life and death, truth and lies, harmony and conflict, while the wings symbolize transcendence. Hermes, as the bearer of this staff, becomes not only a messenger but also a mediator, a harmonizer of opposites. In human life, we constantly navigate contradictions and seek balance between extremes. Hermes' caduceus reminds us that balance does not come by eliminating one side but by weaving both into a harmonious whole. The Greeks understood this deeply, and that is why Hermes was trusted to move freely between worlds that seemed irreconcilable. Hermes also carries an aura of eternal youthfulness, unlike gods such as Zeus or Hera who embody authority and maturity. His depictions as a young man full of energy and charm resonate because youth represents potential, quickness, and adaptability. The Greeks saw in Hermes the eternal freshness of innovation, the playfulness of curiosity, and the joy of moving quickly into new experiences. Even when he guided souls into the underworld, his presence did not feel heavy or grim but light, like a friend walking with you into the unknown. This shows how Hermes softened the harsh edges of existence, making life's transitions less frightening and more bearable. In a world full of uncertainty, Hermes became the reassurance that movement was not something to fear but to embrace. In myth after myth, Hermes appears as a helper and enabler of heroes, a reminder that no one succeeds entirely on their own. When Perseus prepared to slay Medusa, it was Hermes who gave him the winged sandals that allowed him to fly and escape danger. Without Hermes' guidance, Perseus would have perished. Similarly, Odysseus, one of the most clever mortals in Greek mythology, still required Hermes' assistance to survive the spells of Circe. These stories reveal a profound truth: intelligence is amplified by guidance, and even the clever need help. Hermes symbolizes the mentors, the unseen helpers, and the inner voices that guide us when we stand before challenges. His speed is not just about how fast he moves, but about how quickly he brings the right tool, the right advice, the right inspiration at the right time. One of the most fascinating aspects of Hermes is his role as the trickster. Tricksters appear in mythologies across cultures: Loki in Norse myths, Anansi the spider in African folklore, Coyote in Native American traditions, and they all serve a similar function: to disrupt, to challenge, to playfully undermine authority, and to remind us that life is not rigid but full of surprises. Hermes' trickster side was never destructive in a catastrophic way but illuminating. By stealing Apollo's cattle, he forced a situation that ended in the invention of the lyre, blending conflict with creativity. By lying, joking, and scheming, he showed that wit could disarm even anger and that cleverness could turn enemies into allies. Tricksters like Hermes embody the human recognition that strict order alone leads to stagnation, and sometimes only chaos, play, and mischief can bring new growth. In this sense, Hermes was essential to the Greek worldview. He prevented the divine order from becoming stale, reminding even gods that flexibility and humor are powerful. What is remarkable is that Hermes, despite his mischievousness, was loved. Unlike gods who inspired fear or awe, Hermes inspired affection. He was approachable, relatable, and even comforting. People prayed to Hermes not out of terror but out of trust that he would protect their journeys, bless their business ventures, guide their words, or even forgive their mistakes. Hermes' dual patronage of merchants and thieves demonstrates that he did not stand only for virtue as a strict moral principle but for the reality of human activity in all its shades. Commerce involves negotiation, persuasion, and sometimes bending the rules, just as theft involves cleverness and daring. By embracing both, Hermes became the god of movement, of exchange, of risk, and of boldness. He was not a moral judge but a guide for those navigating uncertain, shifting paths. That is why his influence was so practical: every traveler, every merchant, every speaker could feel Hermes near. Philosophically, Hermes' connection to hermeneutics, the art of interpretation, runs deep. The Greeks recognized that every message, every word, every symbol requires interpretation, and Hermes was the divine figure who delivered messages but also left space for humans to interpret them. Life is full of signs, crossroads, and hidden meanings. To interpret them requires not just logic but imagination, quickness of mind, and an openness to multiple possibilities. Hermes is the god of those qualities. In a sense, every time we try to understand life's signals, dreams, coincidences, choices, we are practicing hermeneutics, guided by Hermes' spirit. His role as a messenger was not simply to deliver words but to spark understanding, and that makes him central to the way humans seek truth. The evolution of Hermes into Hermes Trismegistus during the Hellenistic period further expanded his significance. When Greek and Egyptian traditions blended, Hermes merged with Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom and writing, creating a figure revered as a sage and teacher of esoteric knowledge. Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great Hermes, was believed to have written sacred texts that influenced philosophy, alchemy, and mysticism for centuries. The Hermetic tradition emphasized the unity of the divine and the cosmos, the correspondence between the microcosm and the macrocosm, and the transformative power of knowledge. This shows how Hermes was not confined to myths of trickery and speed but also grew into a symbol of wisdom and transcendence, a bridge not only between worlds but between spiritual traditions. In Renaissance Europe, Hermes Trismegistus was revered by philosophers and alchemists who sought to uncover the secrets of the universe. His teachings were believed to hold the key to understanding the harmony between science, spirituality, and the human soul. Even though modern scholarship recognizes these texts as products of a particular cultural blending rather than the literal words of an ancient sage, their impact was profound. Hermes, in this form, inspired thinkers to see knowledge as something transformative, something that could elevate humanity closer to the divine. It is astonishing that a god once known for stealing cattle became a guiding figure for alchemists searching for the philosopher's stone, for philosophers seeking truth, and for mystics yearning for divine union. This adaptability of Hermes proves his timelessness. He could be a playful child, a clever guide, a cosmic teacher, and still remain the same essence of swift, connecting energy. Artists across the centuries have never ceased to depict Hermes in various ways. Ancient statues show him standing poised, ready to move, with the winged sandals on his feet and the caduceus in hand. Renaissance paintings often highlight his grace, his youthful body, and his role as a guide of souls. In modern popular culture, Hermes appears in literature, movies, and even comics, always representing speed, cleverness, or communication. He is a character in Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series, portrayed with humor and cunning. He appears in art as a timeless symbol of agility. Even in fashion, the luxury brand Hermes carries his name, associating him with elegance, swiftness, and refinement. The endurance of his image across such different contexts shows that Hermes is not a god who fades, he is a god who reinvents. The question arises, why does Hermes continue to capture the imagination? Perhaps because he reflects something deeply human. He is not untouchable like Zeus, nor terrifying like Hades, nor warlike like Ares. He is clever, witty, helpful, mischievous, youthful, a mix of traits that feel close to our everyday lives. He does not demand worship through fear but through recognition, for in Hermes we see ourselves, moving quickly through life, navigating between seriousness and play, seeking balance, trying to interpret meaning, longing for connection, and laughing at the absurdity of it all. Hermes is not only a god of Greek mythology but a mirror of the human spirit in motion. To continue exploring the vast character of Hermes, it is important to dive deeper into how he functioned not only as a mythological figure but also as a symbol of transitions in every sense of the word. Hermes was never a static god, he embodied liminality, which means being in between, at thresholds, at the edges of transformation. The Greeks placed him at crossroads not by accident but because he represented that exact moment when one must choose a path, when one stands on the line between one life and another, between safety and risk, between the known and the unknown. In many ways, Hermes is not the god of destinations but of journeys, not of conclusions but of possibilities. This makes him profoundly relevant, because life itself is rarely about static endings but about ongoing movements and decisions. His swiftness meant he could move seamlessly across those thresholds, a quality that mortals deeply admired and sought to imitate. Hermes' connection to travel extended far beyond roads and physical journeys. He was also the god of transitions in communication, meaning he helped messages cross the boundary between one mind and another, between one community and another, between gods and mortals. Communication is itself a journey, an attempt to bridge gaps, and Hermes embodies that process. When an orator spoke in ancient Greece, when a poet recited verses, or when merchants bargained across cultures, they invoked the spirit of Hermes. His quickness of mind, his persuasive eloquence, his ability to charm and to shift perspectives were qualities that shaped the very fabric of Greek society. In many ways, Hermes is the god of culture itself. Because culture is built upon exchange, of words, of goods, of ideas, and Hermes was the divine patron of all those exchanges. The myths that involve Hermes guiding heroes or gods often emphasize this bridging function. When Zeus needed someone to deliver messages without delay, he relied on Hermes because only he could move between Olympus and the mortal world without causing fear or resistance. When Persephone was trapped in the underworld, it was Hermes who descended to escort her back to her mother Demeter, bringing relief to the earth as spring returned. When mortals were about to lose hope in their quests, Hermes appeared with tools, advice, or simple encouragement. In all these roles, he never overshadowed the hero but supported them, never demanded the spotlight but made sure the message or the journey succeeded. This humility combined with cleverness made him beloved, for Hermes was not a god of ego but of service. His speed was not for himself alone but for the purpose of others. Hermes' youthfulness and playfulness also carried a deeper meaning in the Greek worldview. The Greeks valued not only solemn strength but also the lightness of joy, laughter, and cleverness. Life, they believed, required balance, and Hermes was the embodiment of lightness that counterbalanced the heavy seriousness of gods like Hades or Hera. In his jokes, tricks, and laughter, Hermes reminded both gods and mortals that existence was not only about struggle but also about delight. His laughter could dissolve anger, his cleverness could resolve conflicts, and his playful mischief could open doors that force alone could not. This playful aspect is why Hermes feels so modern, because he speaks to our longing not only for survival but for joy. Not only for wisdom but for humor, not only for movement but for dance. The symbolism of Hermes has often been compared to the wind. Just like the wind, he is invisible yet always moving, felt rather than seen, unpredictable yet vital. The wind can guide ships, scatter seeds, and change weather, just as Hermes guides journeys, spreads ideas, and changes destinies. In this sense, Hermes is a divine wind, a breath of movement that reminds humanity of the unseen forces that shape life. His speed was not mechanical but natural, flowing like the air, carrying messages and souls as effortlessly as the breeze carries leaves. This made him less intimidating than thunderous gods like Zeus or Poseidon but no less powerful. Because the wind is essential even if it does not roar, Hermes also played an important role in myths that involved deception and strategy, teaching that intelligence often surpasses brute force. In the Iliad, Hermes guided King Priam safely into the Greek camp to beg for the body of his son Hector, showing that even in the midst of war, Hermes' diplomacy and swiftness could create moments of humanity and peace. Without Hermes, that moment of reconciliation between enemies would not have been possible. This shows that Hermes was not only a god of journeys but of empathy, a god who could soften the hardest of situations by moving quickly to bridge gaps. He represented the idea that speed in delivering kindness, compassion, or understanding could heal even the deepest wounds. In Roman mythology, Hermes was known as Mercury, and his role expanded into new domains. The Romans, highly practical and focused on trade, adopted him as the god of commerce, financial gain, and eloquence. The name Mercury even gives us the word mercantile and is associated with quicksilver, a substance that moves swiftly and fluidly, reflecting his nature. This adaptation shows how seamlessly Hermes could be integrated into different cultures. The Romans saw in him not only the trickster but the god of profit, speed in business, and the flow of wealth. His statues stood in marketplaces, his blessings invoked by merchants, his presence felt in every exchange of goods. Mercury became the protector of commerce and communication, showing that Hermes' essence was not confined to Greece but spread widely through cultural imagination. The planet Mercury, closest to the Sun and the fastest in its orbit, was named after him, cementing his association with speed in the heavens themselves. Astronomers and astrologers alike saw Mercury as a celestial body that mirrored the qualities of the god: quick movement, communication, changeability, and the ability to connect. In astrology, Mercury rules over communication, intellect, travel, and even trickery, proving how enduring Hermes' archetype is. From ancient myths to modern star charts, Hermes continues to guide how humans understand movement and meaning. His influence stretches not only across Earth but into the cosmos, a reminder that swiftness and cleverness are woven into the very fabric of the universe. In psychological terms, Hermes is often seen as the archetype of the guide, the trickster, and the communicator. Carl Jung spoke of Hermes as a symbol of the unconscious forces that guide us through transitions, often in unexpected or paradoxical ways. In dreams, Hermes appears as the figure who helps us cross thresholds, who delivers hidden messages, who reminds us to pay attention to symbols and synchronicities. His archetype lives within every human being as the capacity to move quickly, adapt cleverly, and interpret meaning. This is why stories of Hermes resonate across time. They are not just about a god but about a part of ourselves that we must recognize and cultivate. What makes Hermes so profoundly human-like is that he does not represent perfection in the way some gods attempt to. He lies, he steals, he plays tricks, yet he also comforts, guides, and inspires. He is not flawless but multifaceted. The Greeks understood that life itself is not flawless. It is a blend of mistakes, clever recoveries, playful moments, and serious responsibilities. Hermes embodies that blend. He reassures us that imperfection does not disqualify us from divinity, that even the mischievous can serve the highest purposes, that even the quick-tongued and sly-hearted can bring about harmony. This is a message that continues to resonate, for humans often seek not gods who are unreachable but gods who reflect their complexity. Hermes is precisely that mirror, if we imagine ancient Greece. With travelers walking dusty roads, merchants sailing across seas, poets reciting verses in crowded theaters, and warriors facing uncertain battles, Hermes was present in all those places. His presence was felt in the laughter of children, the negotiations of markets, the swiftness of messengers, the sudden clever idea that saved a life, the comforting dream that guided a soul. He was woven into daily life, not just into sacred rituals. Unlike some gods who lived only in temples, Hermes lived in crossroads, in journeys, in exchanges. He was part of the ordinary, yet his swiftness made him extraordinary. This integration of divinity into daily life is why Hermes endured so strongly. He was not a distant god but a constant companion. In art and literature, Hermes continues to symbolize speed and cleverness, but there is also a deeper artistic fascination with his liminal role. Writers often depict him as the figure who appears at the right time, offering a witty remark, a clever solution, or a quick rescue. He is the god of the unexpected, the one who shifts the story just when it seems stuck. In this sense, Hermes is also the god of creativity. For creativity itself is the sudden movement of thought, the quick leap from one idea to another, the playful invention that shifts perspective. Artists and thinkers through the centuries have invoked Hermes not only as a character but as an inspiration, a reminder that movement is the soul of creation. The endurance of Hermes into the modern imagination also reflects humanity's eternal fascination with speed. From the first runners of ancient Greece to the fast-paced digital world of today, speed has always symbolized power, freedom, and connection. Hermes was the first embodiment of that longing, the divine figure who could move faster than anyone else, who could be everywhere at once, who could deliver what was needed without delay. In the modern world, where we value instant communication, rapid travel, and quick solutions, Hermes feels more alive than ever. He is the ancient echo of our modern heartbeat, the mythological ancestor of our desire to connect quickly and move swiftly. Hermes, the swift-footed god of Greek mythology, remains one of the most fascinating deities ever imagined by the ancient Greeks, and his legacy continues to echo in modern times as a symbol of speed, cleverness, communication, and the unending bridge between the mortal and divine realms. And as we close this long journey through his stories, one can see how Hermes's character was never confined to a single dimension. He was not just a trickster, not merely a messenger, not only a guide, not simply a protector of travelers, not only the patron of merchants and thieves, but rather a god whose many faces reflected the complexity of human life itself. For in every tale he appeared, there was the mark of adaptability, resourcefulness, and the ability to navigate the most difficult situations with intelligence and grace. Whether it was as a newborn stealing Apollo's cattle and crafting the first lyre, or as the wise mediator resolving disputes among gods, or as the compassionate psychopomp guiding souls to the afterlife with care and dignity, Hermes was always a reminder that life requires agility of mind and heart, that survival is not always about brute strength but about creativity and quick thinking and, in this sense, he was more than a mythological character. He was a reflection of humanity's admiration for wit, resilience, and innovation, and his myths continue to resonate today because the qualities he embodied are timeless. Whether in the realm of communication, where speed and clarity are valued more than ever, or in travel and trade, where safety, adaptability, and negotiation remain crucial, or in the metaphorical journeys of human beings who, like the souls Hermes once guided, seek direction, hope, and safe passage through the challenges of life. His winged sandals and caduceus remain enduring symbols of movement, transformation, and balance, reminding us that even in a world of constant change, one can carry the wisdom of being fast yet thoughtful, clever yet compassionate, daring yet diplomatic. And so Hermes' presence in mythology becomes a guiding inspiration for people of every generation, showing that speed without wisdom can be reckless. But speed with understanding can bring progress, that trickery without compassion may harm. But cleverness with fairness can solve conflicts, and that to be a messenger is not only to deliver words but also to carry peace, reconciliation, and guidance. And in this way Hermes was not only the fastest god in Greek mythology but also one of the most deeply human in his divine complexity. Embodying the laughter of youth, the brilliance of intellect, the courage of exploration, and the grace of a guide, and through his stories we discover that myths are not just about gods living in distant realms but about timeless lessons woven into narratives, stories that continue to whisper across centuries, reminding us that life, like Hermes' endless journeys, is a path of motion, creativity, and connection, and as long as human beings continue to tell stories, to trade ideas, to travel, to communicate, and to seek guidance in the unknown, the figure of Hermes will continue to run beside them, swift as ever, carrying with him not only the echoes of ancient Greece but also the eternal truth that wisdom and speed, when held in harmony, can light the way forward.